Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today with GridMarkets yet again, bringing you some of the most innovative people and studios in the VFX and animation space. My name is Sadie Groom. I'm the Managing Director of Bubble Agency. A very long time ago, I was the PR manager for Softimage, but that was obviously a very long time ago, but still a huge Softimage fan for any of those people out there as well. So this evening, we are going to be with Marc Ross, who's the co-founder of GridMarkets. He's going to be giving us an overview, followed by Anup Ojar from Oracle, and then lastly our star guest, who is Marc Horsfield from Od Studios, who's the co-founder. So I'll introduce you all to those people later on. So before we get into it with Marc, we have a couple of other presentations. So firstly, we have one from GridMarkets co-founder and the man who made this webinar come to life, which is Marc Ross. Marc will take us through the power of GridMarkets, followed by a short presentation from Anup Ojar from Oracle. So over to you, Marc.
Thanks, Sadie. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm going to give you just a very brief overview of GridMarkets, what we do and how we do it. So we're a cloud rendering and simulation service. We support all the major 3D packages, Cinema 4D, Houdini, Maya, 3ds Max, Blender, and Nuke, and the major renders, both CPU and GPU renders that go along with that. The submission process is super simple. You just decide how many machines you want to run on, what the configuration of those machines are. You submit directly from your 3D software, so there's nothing new to learn. We provide a plugin which integrates into your 3D software, so it becomes then a menu option within that software that you use to launch to us. And it's a pay-as-you-go model. You pay by the machine hour. There's one machine hour cost. It covers everything, no other costs. So very simple payment model. The platform was built and supported by artists, so we've gotten lots of input from folks like you that have shaped our technical roadmap. So hopefully you'll find it very easy to use. It's being used by now over 4,000 customers in over 90 different countries. And the GridMarkets team is located all around the world, so we're able to provide you 24-hour-by-7 support because of that arrangement. To get started, it's a very simple process. You go to the sign up page, which you can see the URL for in the bottom left corner. You create an account, which is free. And then you download something called Envoy, which is, there's 3 different versions of it, depending on what your operating system choice is. And Envoy will contain the tools that you'll use to be able to submit to us. Inside the Envoy download are the plugins for the 3D software that you're may be interested in, say, for example, Houdini or Maya or whatever. So you would install that plugin for that 3D software. And then Envoy is the tool that is responsible for getting your files to and from our cloud. So once you download that, you install the plugin, let's say Houdini, for example, and this slide is showing that you've installed the Houdini plugin. And then your project files would be uploaded to GridMarkets via Envoy. And then we would run your job using one of the renderers that we support. So it's very simple. You just decide your machine configuration and your machine count, and off it goes. After that is submitted, you'll get a real-time dashboard, which looks like this. And it will show you the status of any of your submissions, how far along they are in the process, which ones are completed. You also have job management control from here. So if you want to stop a job or restart a job, you can do that easily from this console. And then as your frames are completed, they're downloaded to your workstation. So you don't have to wait for the frames to complete. They just come to the download folder that you specify. And that's it. If you want to give it a shot, you can have a free trial. Go to gridmarkets.com, sign up. We're offering a 15% discount for anyone who signs up. Use this webinar promotion code there, 2021, August 11th webinar, and you'll get a 15% discount on any of the credits that you purchase. That's all from me. So back to you, Sadie.
Thanks, Mark. As always, super informative and impressive to see, and I would definitely take up the free trial offer. So the success of a studio is only as good as its security, as we all know. And as mentioned earlier, we're joined by Anoop Ojar, who's Senior Manager of Global HPC Cloud Engineering at Oracle. Have I got that right? So please, Anoop, without further ado, tell us a little bit more about who Oracle are and the services that you offer. Over to you.
Good to meet you, Siri, and good morning and good evening, everybody on the call today. So my name is Anoop Ojar. As Siri introduced myself, I'm a global senior manager for Oracle Cloud Engineering team. I run a team, we call it high performance computing, and some people might call it supercomputers. So interesting enough, GridMarkets runs on a platform as you being a VFX artist. So behind the scene, the infrastructure is being provided by Oracle Cloud. So just to give you a brief background on Oracle Cloud, we have built a Gen 2 cloud or a Generation 2 cloud. So there are a lot of other hyperscalers today in the market. They are a Generation 1 hyperscalers. We built this cloud maybe around 5 to 6 years back. And when we started building our Gen 2 cloud, there was 3 primary tenets behind that. We have to build it from the get-go. That is, we got all the previous experience from the other hyperscalers. So we were able to build a cloud that is totally designed to perform, to give price performance, and then security. I believe these are the 3 main challenges: price, performance, and security. And we were able to build a Gen 2 cloud. So when Mark and his team were looking to run their platform on a cloud provider, in this case, they chose Oracle Cloud because I think the most important of the 3 was security. So I'm not going to take too much time. You can read this slide, but just if you want to take away from my slide, there are 3 main things. That Oracle Cloud has been built on security first approach. So the security is built in. It is always turned on by default. You cannot switch off security just to do something on our cloud. And then there's no extra charges for that. So what that means is we're providing a platform or infrastructure to our customers like GridMarket in this case, and customers like you, like VFX artists who would be willing to put their media, their files, those are your crown jewels. So you have to ensure that the crown jewels, as GridMarkets takes it, it has to be stored in a very secure way. And Oracle Cloud is the provider behind the scene. What we have done is we've built a lot of security controls across the cloud. There are auto detection, there are auto remedy, and we have a whole team of security folks behind the scene that we keep monitoring our entire infrastructure, and everything's automated in most of the cases, right? So that means as you put your crown jewel on GridMarket, we behind the scene Oracle Cloud make sure that that's been stored in the most safest place, which is OCI. That's it from my side. If you have any questions on Oracle security or Oracle Cloud, please feel free to ask questions. Thank you, Siri.
Thank you so much, Anoop. That was really interesting. So now over to our main event. I'm really pleased to welcome today Marc Horsfield, founder of Vancouver-based VFX and animation house Od Studios. Mark's career as senior production technologist and VFX supervisor spans over 20 years with an impressive roster of credits, including Ant-Man and the Wasp, Black Panther, and Guardians of the Galaxy 2. All great films, I'm sure you all agree. So Mark is now going to tell us a bit more about himself. I'm going to ask him some questions, but please feel free to ask us any, which you can do using the Q&A box. Mark, let's start from the beginning, rewinding all the way back to the early 90s. I think you're going to play us a show reel first.
Yeah.
And then we can have a bit of a chat.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to share my reel.
There's some great stuff
spectacular.
in there.
That was awesome.
That
Yeah.
that was amazing. What a great reel as well. Did you have a favourite of those, Mark?
No.
Bit like asking what who your favourite child is. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as with anything, probably the most recent, right? San Andreas was probably one of the best I've worked on. At least it was the most fun and most challenging all at the same time.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I feel like that was just because it was the most recent.
Yeah. the recent memory.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
you actually started life as a software developer. So how and when did you make the change into the animation and VFX world?
I always wanted to get into animation and VFX. That was my my main goal. And I think when I was still in high school, I went to some Autodesk Expo, and I was speaking to some, I just went to random booths and was speaking to people and just asking how to get into the industry. And at the time, which was the early 90s, everyone said, you have to know how to program. You have to be you have to program software, because there were no tools. So that was and this was South Africa, so there was no VFX industry back then. But so that was it. I went and got a programming diploma, and then slowly over time worked my way into the industry.
And do you think you've always had that creative flair in you?
Yeah, I think I've known since I was probably about 11 or 12 that this is what I wanted to do. It was either games or it was visual effects.
Right.
Yeah.
So why not games? Why one, not the other?
I don't know. I think, it's probably around the time when Toy Story came out, and then it was one of those, realizations that this could actually be a career that you could do, and you could create something that looked that good on screen, and that's where it went. Yeah.
And that's what you wanted to do. So you've worked at some of the biggest studios in the industry, including Sony Imageworks, Digital Domain, Black Ginger, Method, Rhythm and Hues. I remember them all. Mainly from SIGGRAPH parties in the old days. What sort of roles did you have at those facilities?
I started life as a generalist, because this was in South Africa. So this was, back in the day where you kind of did everything. And, I wanted to be an animator, I think, as everyone or most people do when they come into the industry, but I got put into effects because of my programming background. So, I was the person deigned to understand how Houdini worked, and so they dropped me on Houdini 0.9 whatever it was, and we went forward from there. And so most of my career has been in effects, and then just growing through from an effects artist to senior, to a lead, to a supervisor, and then sequence supervisor and CG soup, and working my way up to there to VFX soup.
So it really did evolve over time. And did you get much training along the way? How did that path evolve?
Training in the industry, everything was on everything was on the job. So this was late 90s when I started. There was this was late 90s in South Africa, of all things, right? So there were no colleges, there was no training, there was barely any internet, so everything was on the job training. They dropped me on the box. They said, here's Houdini, here's how you load it. The guy sitting next to you, he knows how to use Houdini. Ask him all the questions you need. And by the way, here's a project. We need it delivered in 5 weeks, whatever it was. So.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you, obviously done lots of varied roles. And so how did that influence your understanding of the industry and influence your career?
I think, most of my roles have been in effects, generally speaking, but because I had a generalist background, that definitely gave me an understanding of the full pipeline. And then I think, my technical programming background gave me a sort of a wild interest in how everything worked and how everything flowed through the pipeline. So, in the larger studios, I always had my hands, or at least stuck my nose in other people's business, I'd say, and kind of paid attention to how things happened on the back end. It wasn't just sit down, create shots, and then go home kind of thing. It was always like, well, how does this work, and why are these things this way, and why were these decisions made, and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
I mean, did you have particular people in certain roles that you really looked up to when you were going through?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, most of the time, in the early days, especially at DD and Sony, this was it was a different time in the industry. But the supervisors and the people that were above me that gave me a chance, they were amazing mentors that, and without even being mentors necessarily, they didn't take me under their wing and mentor me, but just watching how they behaved and how they handled things and how they worked was probably the finest education I could have received, really.
Yeah. Sometimes it happens, that sort of mentoring can happen by osmosis a bit, can't it? Doesn't always need to be a set program or something that you need to be on.
Yeah, and I think it was great working at DD for my first sort of, LA-based studio, because they always had that kind of pirate ship mentality where they were like the rebels of the industry, and it didn't really matter that I was the new guy. I was the new guy. It was once you were in, you were part of the team, and everyone treated you as part of the team, and that was kind of the you were all together doing the thing that you were doing. So it was very it was great.
Yeah, and so where were you at this point geographically? Were you in
that was LA?
South Africa? That was what you were actually in LA. It wasn't the remote world production like it is today wasn't there then, was it?
No, that was South Africa, and then the dream to leave South Africa was to go to LA.
Obviously what happened. So in addition to work on some of the biggest films, TV shows and commercials, in 1997 you founded Od Force. I'm guessing it's Od. Yep. Can you tell us a bit more about that, please?
So that was, Jason Iverson and myself were the only two. We used to joke, which is probably an incorrect joke, but it doesn't matter. We joked about it anyway, that we were the only two Houdini users on the entire continent of Africa. So we felt very lonely. And our way to achieve that and to fix that problem was to create a website where we could get other people to send us stuff and or communicate with us so that we didn't feel quite so isolated. And that was where it started. We started with a way of sharing tools. That was what the site was. And then we opened the forum, and then eventually it just became the forum. That was the main thing, because, and now we have, I think, 21 years worth of forum posts that have just always been there and never gone down. And it's been amazing. I've had tons of people who have come up to me in the industry and just thanked me for having the site, because it's been there for them when they were a teenager and trying to figure out how to get in the industry and asking stupid questions or whatever it was that they were doing. And, there was the forum and people were so willing to help and just there for them, really, to help them get in. Yeah.
It's that amazing community feeling, isn't it? So it really helps. And it's amazing how people don't necessarily know that there is actually somebody behind starting one of these. They just sort of think they appear. So that's amazing that you did that. So talking a bit sort of more about sort of what you're doing around today. So obviously you've got this massive knowledge, lots of different disciplines. When did the idea of setting up your own studio start forming in your mind?
I think in 2008, my family and I went back to South Africa. We left LA, we went back to South Africa. And I started working for a small studio there that was Black Ginger. And, we helped them rebuild their pipeline and move from Windows to Linux. So there was kind of that whole process of, trying to build the studio up, I guess, from an infrastructure point of view. And it was around that time when I kind of had an inkling of a thought that I could do this for myself. So I started building a business plan then and seeing if we could start a studio in South Africa. Unfortunately, it was a couple of years later that the financial crisis hit South Africa. So the work dried up, my job went away. And because there weren't many studios in South Africa, I kind of left and went to Australia to work on LPP2. So that died. And then when I got to Vancouver, we worked for Rhythm and Hughes, and I was there through the bankruptcy. But post-bankruptcy, those of us who remained in the Vancouver studio to avoid being bored, we decided to come up with our own animated project. So we made a couple of animated shorts. And so that was, another piece of the puzzle, which was like, well, if we could just decide to do this, then it's possible, right? If we can do this, anyone can do this.
Yeah.
And then the last piece of the puzzle was working at Method, where Method was an interesting test case of a business. And so I was involved in a lot of executive level meetings as the head of production technology. And so I could watch that all happen, and see behind the curtain from a business side of things. And so that then everything kind of, all the pieces of the puzzle kind of gelled. And I was like, okay, this is something I could probably do.
Mm. Do you think you took bits of learning from all of those?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's always good to see someone else's business model, isn't it, and see what you like about it and what you don't.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I know this is the most naive thought that every single business owner has ever thought, which is, well, if they can do it, so can I, which is, very naive.
Yeah, I did it exactly the same here.
Yeah. And that's not necessarily true, but willful ignorance, I think, is helpful in these cases.
Yeah, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, exactly.
That's always my saying.
Yeah.
So in 2019, Od Studios was born. So when you started developing the pipeline, what were your main concerns at that time?
So it's funny because I actually registered the corporation in 2016, and then I spent 2 years building the pipeline pre-launch. There were friends of mine that I worked with before who started their own software companies, so I engaged with them to build our pipeline. And I guess the massive experiment that we're undertaking is we want to build a full high-end feature animation pipeline with a small team. So really we want to be running with a small team of possibly up to 20 to 30 people, artists running on the pipeline, but we want that pipeline to be able to handle a 2,000 shot full-length feature animation project. So with all the asset management and everything that comes along with that, and that's kind of the crazy thought that we have. So, yeah.
Well, so did you already have a roster of work to get started with?
No, and it's great because my business partner, Jason Brewer, he was, I registered the corporation, built the pipeline, and then didn't really know how to continue. And then Jason joined in, and he was kind of the impetus of, giving me the kick to get me out of my comfort zone to actually launch the thing. And we launched with us in a very small 900 square foot studio or, space in downtown Vancouver with 2 desks and 1 workstation and a laptop. And we sat there staring at each other for a few weeks, wondering what we had done with our lives.
Yep, been there, done that.
Yeah.
Do you think it made a difference starting it with somebody?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have just been me sitting in a room by myself wondering.
Well, yeah, exactly. talking to the wall.
Yeah.
So when you started, were there particular types of projects that you wanted to work on? I mean, you mentioned features. Was that we're only going to do features, or we'll do anything, or?
No, the design of at least the business model that we're trying to successfully implement really is to work on use visual effects as a vehicle, be a VFX vendor and use the income from that to build the feature animation side. So really our ultimate goal is to develop our own IP, write our own stories, sell them, and then, and then make our own movies. So VFX has always been the vehicle that drives us there and pays for the development of the studio. But our goal idea is that we hire artists and all of our staff, and we build a culture from within of developing stories and telling stories and implementing stories, and having artwork on the walls of all the stuff that we're doing in-house, and just trying to build that culture from day one, and then hopefully get to the point where we can sell something, or we can work on a project which is a feature animation, and then just go from there.
From there. Yeah, it sounds like from the culture that you're talking about, and the other stuff you've done in the past, it feels like community is a really big value for you.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you feel that we're building the team? Do you feel that those what the main values been?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I miss the old days of the industry, I guess, in some way, right? Where when the first studio I started at was, I think there were 12 of us, and every single person who worked for the company came from a different background, right? There were programmers, there was someone who used to work at a bank, there was someone who works in the ad industry, there was someone who was, I think he works in the medical industry, and everyone, the common factor that joined us was a passion for the industry, right? We were just fired up for everything. So building a team and developing a culture is very important. So if you find people who can who have the same interests, I guess, the same desires, the same needs to create amazing things, then yeah, that's very important.
Yeah, it is very important. Do you want to share us some of the reels?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so I mean, so we've been going since 2019, so this is our short but 2-year reel.
Are they all from features or?
No, that's a mix of commercials, TV shows, and there's one feature in there. We've worked on a couple of features. Some of them haven't been released yet, so we can't show them. I do have a clip from a feature that we're currently working on that we did get permission to show.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, that'd be great. Let's have a look.
So this was just as an intro. We were approached for, it's an independent football film. And because it's independent, they shot over, I think, a course of 6 or 7 years. And in a series of shoots, one of their actors was unavailable. And so they shot with another one. And so they came to us and they said, can you do face replacements? And we were like, in our naive optimism, said, sure, we can. So these are the clips of the face replacements that we were given permission to share.
Excellent.
So this first clip is the original actor, and then the next shot is the face replacement.
Do you want to talk a bit about? Are you allowed to talk about how you did that?
Yeah, so that's well, firstly, that's a movie called One Heart, so you should all go see it when it comes out. Yeah, we used deepfakes for that, which is, I think, the technology that everyone's using. It's a wild ride. You have to. There's no documentation. There's no anything. There's some sort of random tutorials occasionally, translated probably from Russian, and it's just it's pretty crazy. But the software itself is phenomenal, and it's. We run the thing and then you swap the face once you've done the training. And I mean, there's a lot of manual labor at first to get everything prepped. But once you do that, you run the software and then you swap the face. And I mean, you saw the results of that, but it was, when you first see it, I'm like A/Bing between the two, and it's just unbelievable how
can't see the difference.
Fantastic it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think that will end up getting used more and more? That technology and
hopefully it gets us more projects.
Yeah.
Whether I want to do a ton of face swamps, I'm not sure. But,
I don't know. When you were dreaming of your creative flair of working in VFX, that probably wasn't it, was it?
Well, it's one of those things where we're using it is cutting edge technology, right? It is on the forefront of the technological revolution that we're undergoing right now, and so it's amazing to be able to have a project that does that can help us with that. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mark, what you mentioned? Sorry, say what was the software that you used? If you can talk about it to produce those results.
It was called Deepfakes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think or face. Actually, you know what? I'd have to look it up. It's a face swap or something. There's two main ones, and one of them has been forked to try and make it more palatable to the industry. We didn't use that one. We used the unpalatable one, which has gone off into the weeds because it's more. I guess it's more developed, at least.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So a question, a non-tech question around the studio. Obviously, we talked about the big facilities that Jason have worked in. Did this give you an idea of how you want to do things differently, how you want to run the company, how you want to be different? And so if so, what were those things?
I think, yeah, I mean, I've learned, having worked at studios of every size, right, from 10, 11 people all the way through to thousands of staff, right? I mean, Rhythm and Hughes had 4 offices worldwide. I think there are 2 in India, 2 or 3 in India, and then a Vancouver operation and in LA. And from all of those, I've learned, I guess, good things and bad things, right? There's positive lessons I've taken away that I would love to replicate. There's things, I was only at Rhythm and Hughes for just over a year, and there's things I still miss about that studio. And it was a tragedy when it all kind of went crashing down.
Definitely was. Yeah.
And then there's other studios I worked at where there's a lot of like, oh, let's never do that, kind of thing. And so it's really an amalgamation of everything that I've been through in my career, and taking all of those lessons and trying to build a studio that, I guess, takes care of the staff, right? Like, what we want to do is we want people to have good lives. We also want people to create things that have meaning. We don't really necessarily want to work on just any project that comes our way. Our ultimate desire would be to work on something that provides value both to everyone who watches it, but also to everyone who works on it. So so that's kind of the main thing. But I mean, I'm everything from tech. I have very strong opinions for everything from tech related all the way through to running a business. So
I think as a business owner, you're sort of head of HR, finance, IT, creative, client care, the whole thing, aren't you?
12 hats I'm wearing at the moment. Yeah,
exactly. Good. Question about why you set up in Vancouver and not South Africa or anywhere else? Hello.
Honestly, the main impetus for Vancouver was that I never wanted to move ever again. That was kind of the.
And you've had enough of that.
Because we moved. Well, we left LA in 2008, and then by 2012 we lived on 3 continents.
Wow.
And worked at 4 different places, 4 different companies, and it's myself, my wife, and it was our 3 kids at the time. So it's it's a lot for the children. So we didn't want to move again. And my brain said, well, Disney and Blue Sky and all of these other studios, they work in places that don't have tax credits. So, if we start an animation studio, we can survive if we actually sell something. So
exactly.
We don't have to go at the whim of, governmental policies, really, is kind of the plan.
No.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that's fair enough. Bit of a tech question again about what are your thoughts on the cloud and how it's changed things? Has it?
It has definitely changed things, and it will keep changing things. I still feel like I'm a bit of a Luddite when it comes to the cloud. I don't know. I love the cloud. I love the idea of the cloud. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I struggle with containing costs in the cloud. That's my struggle. And so as soon as that nut is cracked, I think we will jump in with both feet, because it's such an amazing opportunity. But yeah, my brain doesn't quite understand how to not bankrupt myself when I go into the cloud. So.
Well, maybe you could speak to Anoop.
Yeah, well, I mean, we should, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
the thing is, like, we say that, but we have used GridMarkets, to burst into the cloud, and so we're kind of like 50-50 right now, where we have a certain level of infrastructure here in the studio, but we also use the cloud when we need to. So it's really, I mean, there's, as with all of these tech things, it's not going away, and it's only going to get better and more achievable. And now with COVID, the lure slash not even lure, but just the remote work seems to be a thing, which is actually achievable now, whereas it was probably achievable before, but just because of
what's happened.
So
do you want to explain about what what's happened at Od Studios over the past, where are we, 16 months now? Of the pandemic?
I mean, I've well, we're still here, so that's a good thing. I felt like the pandemic took the wind out of our sails, as it did with a lot of studios, I think. We felt like we were getting some momentum with projects, and then the pandemic came and everything just kind of slowed down, but we kind of made it through, and now things are picking up again. But there's definitely it's a new world, right? So now you have artists basically wondering whether or not they should ever come back into the studio, and and I mean, it makes sense for me too, right? There's a lot of there's a lot of people who live downtown because they were close to, in whatever city they were in the world. And now they're looking around going, wait, if I can work from home, why does my home have to be in, one of the most expensive cities in the world? Why can it not be somewhere else? And so, so we have to deal with that new reality, I think. And it'll be interesting to see where the industry goes in the next few years.
But you've still got an office space and a studio.
Yeah, we still have an office space downtown Vancouver. It's actually funny because some of our staff, the artists that we have now, I'd say a fair proportion of them, when we hired them, their first question was, can I come back into the office? Can I stay there? Can I come in every day? Is that fine? We're like, that's totally fine.
Exactly.
Because, it's, again, some people stay in a small 1-bedroom apartment, and the last thing you want to do for the rest of your life is stay in that small 1-bedroom apartment. You want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always found that people in this sector are really sociable as well. And there are artists and developers in other sectors who aren't. So I think that's great that people want to come back into the office as well. So
just for us, sorry, just before we move on from that point, like I worry about the new artists, right? Anyone coming into the industry now, that I think is really a thing that we don't ever want to do away with, right? We never want to go to a full remote studio, because how you learn, it's the relationships you form, it's the people you meet, it's what you learn from just standing behind someone, watching them work at their workstation and seeing the decisions they make while they're working. And if we go fully remote and everyone's working over Zoom, you lose that.
Definitely.
Nothing.
And also client facing as well. Even though you obviously want to produce your own projects, but you do have in others, then you will have clients and they want to see people and they want to sit and talk about things. So so that's a great segue. It's like I primed you to say it, because my next question was going to be that you mentioned that you started with Autodesk. So when did you shift to Houdini and why? And how did you climb that learning curve?
Oh, actually, no. I went to an Autodesk Expo.
Okay.
I learned 3D Studio Release 3 by myself, and then I went to a Silicon Graphics. I think they called it the Silicon Studio. I think this was my only training, which was 2 weeks worth of 3D Studio, I think, or something. I can't remember what it was. But no, as soon as I started the industry, they dropped me on Houdini 0.9, which wasn't even the full 1.0 release yet.
Right.
I've been Houdini since then. Yeah.
And you've been doing that ever since.
Yeah.
So these questions are coming in from the audience. So excuse me, reading them. So I'm thinking of starting my own studio and would like to know what skills you think are essential for success.
A willful ignorance as to the reality of the situation here, and a desire. It's not easy. And I think whatever you do, you're going to have to learn a ton of new skills, right? There's a whole host of things there's a whole host of questions that you haven't even thought of asking that you need the answers to when you start your own business. But honestly, for us, the best way to figure those out was to start the business, right? That's the thing. So if you have a passion and a drive to do it, then you should just do it. That's kind of my advice, really. It's kind of like having a child, right? Everyone says, well, I'm going to wait till I'm ready. I'm like, there's nothing.
You'll never be ready.
You'll never be ready. The only way to get ready is to have a child. That's how you figure it out, right? So it's kind of the same thing, where you just, when you're in there working, then you start learning what you don't know, and then you figure it out really quickly. So
and there's never a book that they give you when having a child or starting your own business that has all those answers. So
well, no, and even if they do, the answers don't really make sense until you go through it yourself, right?
Absolutely. So another question is, what was the most difficult scene you have had to work on?
Difficult scene?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a long history of I think probably the one that jumps to mind is the RIPD, which is on my reel, which I say is the movie with the finest visual effects that no one ever saw, because it was such a weird movie and I don't think it did very well. But Yeah, the effects were great. The characters were the digidoubles were amazing, done by R&H. But yeah, one of the way the everyone died, the ghosts, I guess they were, whatever they were, that, you know, when I got to R&H, they were on version 150 of the concept art of that, and
Wow.
and they were on version, I don't know, 95 of the effects like dev work. And then when I got on the show, we kind of piled in, and, you know, I grabbed a few effects artists and we sat down and we tried to figure it out. And I think we went through a whole bunch of versions before the director finally approved the actual effect that we landed on. So that was the hardest, just, and mainly because it was just one of those things where, you know, I keep calling them the hand wavy effects, right? Where the directors are like, well, I want this. And then they can only explain it via, you know, waving their hands around a lot, but there's no real concrete anything. And that was probably the prime example of one of those, right? Which is the director wanted something, and the only way you could figure it out was to try and kind of get inside his mind and figure out what he was hoping to see, and then showing that to him. Otherwise, everything else was just kicked back. So, yeah.
Excellent. Right. So thank you, Mark. That's been really informative and entertaining, actually, as well. So I think we've covered a lot, from technology to running a business and all those things in between. So we're going to end up now. There is a promo code here that you can use. The next webinar is on September the 14th. There's a link to the Oracle site, and if you have any questions, email support@gridmarkets.com. So again, thanks to two Marks, and Anoop for today, and we will see you again in September.